everyone, this is Kandace and Sher with Processing Trauma Out Loud. Sher, you and I just spent, oh my gosh, probably an hour processing where we wanted to go in these next few episodes after this series on shame that we did. If you have not listened to this series on shame that we did, I think there's what, 5, 6 episodes. I think I lost track. But we're getting some really cool feedback of how helpful it's been for the people who have been listening. So I just want to encourage you, if you go back and listen to that, it kind of will help you with where we're going for our next few episodes. Sher, you and I just process what is it like when we have peeled back these layers of shame that we have lived with for so long, sometimes, and a lot of times, mostly unconsciously, even. But part of the healing is bringing into our conscious awareness when shame is showing up, what it feels like in our bodies, the sensations, the emotions that are associated with it, and then ultimately the belief systems that are attached to our shame. And so now we're peeling back these layers of shame, which doesn't mean they won't creep back up at times, but it usually does mean that we process through it much quicker and we don't get that hook stuck back in. And so where we want to go today is, who are we? Who are we underneath this shame that has just wrapped around our lives? And we had an image like an octopus with tentacles. And so now we're tasting some freedom, and we're actually starting to remember what it was like as a child, maybe as a teenager, even a young adult, um, when we have these places of aliveness, of this sense of, I want to say, purpose, like something about us that we remember that we're like, ah, that felt so pure and so us, and who we want to return to from a healed place. And you shared with me as we were processing this about a dream that you had that kind of helped you remember even more what that place was like for you. And so I want to invite you to just share that with our listeners.
I feel like I need to give a little backstory too, and just saying, when when we're doing this work, okay, there are seasons when we go kind of deep into places that maybe get us more into our body, maybe get us more into our grief, maybe get us more into our anger, right? Maybe cause us to maybe cause us to go through some seasons of breaking curses and breaking vows, and then sometimes we're awakened by this surprise of joy that just kind of comes forth. And so I've kind of been in a U. I had to actually evaluate that this morning and be like, have I been in the U? And I think I've been in the U, meaning going down into those places of deeper grief and not bypassing the hurtful spaces, but going there and lingering and sorting through. And I've been sorting through a lot of stuff there. And I woke up at 12:30 this morning from a dream, and often when I awaken from a dream, I feel heavy and I feel sad, and my dreams feel like they often contain a lot of anxiety or sadness. And but I woke up from this dream and I just felt so much joy. And in the dream, and it took me back to when I got out of college and I was a brand new teacher, 22 years old, and I looked like I was about 16, and I went to this small school, and I experienced just the love of teaching and the love of interacting with the kids, and it was a space where, I was a beloved teacher by many of the students, and I was just feeling that in my dream, because I was back there in my dream, and I was calling these, especially girls, because I taught I taught the younger children, and then I taught I taught. It was a small school. I taught a lot of different things, but in my dream, I was talking to the girls, and I was calling them up into aliveness, and I was calling them up into fullness and wholeness, and I woke up from this dream just feeling so much joy for the memory of, in a lot of ways, how I did that. Imperfectly, for sure. But I
Mhm.
carried a light into that space that I think was meaningful for a lot of people. And I'm just holding that today, that sense of that's who I was back there in my early 20s. And then that kind of took me back into remembering some places in childhood when I felt so alive. And, you know, I think I've even talked about this on the podcast, but climbing trees and riding horseback and, swimming and all these times and places where I felt so alive. And I think over the last few, not that I haven't experienced times of that in these last few years when I've been doing the hard work of healing, but honestly, I've broken some big major curses over the last couple of months, and really I've done even some rituals around breaking shame. And I woke up this morning with this surprise of joy. And I'm just feeling it. I feel like I'm carrying it. And it's both propelling me forward into an expansiveness, and it's also taking me back to remembering like who I see that I am and expanding into isn't who I have not been. It's who I
Mhm.
have been. But shame has really covered over a lot of that for a long time.
Mhm. Yeah, I want to just mention really quick for our listeners, you've used the word curses a few times. And if you've listened to previous episodes, you'll know what Cher's talking about. But a curse is anything that comes into our life at a young age that really curses who we are at the core of our God created image. So it's a perception, it's a lie based off of maybe what someone said, maybe what someone didn't do. Like if you had parents that were highly neglectful, like didn't see you at all, that curse would be for that child, oh, I don't matter.
Yeah.
And so that's part of what we do in story work coaching is we help people identify those curses that attach to a belief system about who you are.
Yeah.
And so share your that curse that you began to confront. I think it's interesting because you had the childhood trauma, but then in your 20s, you were able to see something that was bringing you life, right? But then you kind of went through this process of needing to go back and heal the trauma.
Mhm.
And when you went back, it may have felt like you were going backwards, but you were actually just going deeper.
Mhm.
Because until that trauma is healed, even our gifting is still attached to a lot of the shame.
Yeah.
And so what happens when we go back, like someone might say, well, Cher, why'd you even deal with your trauma if you were so in your aliveness?
Yeah.
But here's why. Because most often our aliveness is still attached to the shame of why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Right? It's healing that Cher. You get to be who you are in all your glory, not because you're trying to earn anyone's approval, not because you're trying to avoid consequences, not because you're trying to get love. You're going back to that original, this is who Cher is, and she's shining just because of who she is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I hope this isn't confusing, but part of, I'm going to say, this invitation that we begin to feel like, oh, I have things that are still causing me pain, and I need to look at what's underneath the surface. It doesn't change the fact of who you are and your gifting and your glory, but you're just getting free from the shame that's associated. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah, and I think, and also just, and I'm going to use this word reenactment.
Mm.
What shame and what curses, so as you said, we experience these curses where some, so I will just use the example. I mentioned this on the podcast a few weeks ago that my mother would say to me, if you act like that, it proves you are just like your dad. And my dad was a very volatile, rageful, violent in our home, and to me, very abusive man. And so this curse of if I don't act the way that is approved, it proves I am just like him. And so that was a curse. And then I agreed with that curse. So I made agreements like, oh, see, I did that, or I said that, or that does prove I'm just like him. And then I made vows. Well, if I am just like him, I can never let anybody know that. And so I will never get
Mhm.
angry, or I will never speak a word of, from rage or whatever. I mean, so I made vows. And so as I have been, okay, so then, and all of these come under shame's grip. And so what happens is, even when we move on in life, we tend to get into the same types of systems or relationships that feel familiar. So we reenact almost in a sense like this mother father. It can be the mother father figures, or it can be the dysfunctional family system, which is
Mhm.
what I did. I got out of college. I began working in a place that was a very dysfunctional system.
Mhm.
And so I kind of went from one system into another system because that was what felt familiar. And so even though I had those moments where I felt alive and where I was had my light that was shining, but then was this kind of oppression that would come of, oh, I must remember and live according to the knowledge of my curses, my agreements, and my vows, which is all happening subconsciously. Like I wasn't consciously aware of it. I hope, does that make sense, Candace, or is
I think we're making sense, but we can let our listeners know. It made sense to me, and it made me want to ask you. So I know you didn't share this um, right now, but you were saying in your role as a PE teacher, you had joy helping kids know how to use their bodies and find joy in movement and activity.
yeah.
And I wonder, I don't know, where did that come from, Cher? Like, it feels connected, but I want to hear more about that because there's a sense that maybe you were angry about something or concerned or saw something or knew something and you wanted to make a difference.
Hmm. And I think also it was me. Like as a child, I was so alive and I was so in my body and I was so connected to movement and feeling alive. And I can remember specifically shutting that down in some ways when I became into junior high years. And but I think then, yeah, I'm not sure what, but I think more than being angry about something, I believe I was just alive. I came
Can I
into a
give you a little
space.
bit of pushback?
Yeah, yes, please.
Actually, I don't want to call it pushback. I want to say that your little girl in very intense, stressful, harmful situations, found relief in body movement,
Mhm,
climbing trees, walking in the forest.
mhm.
Like, I think there is a sense of this wasn't okay. And
Mhm.
this is something that helped me.
Yeah,
Because here's what I want to say. Those kids, some of those kids were in your same situation.
yeah. Mhm.
And I
Yeah,
don't know, it just feels like you were giving them this gift that was a gift to you.
yeah.
And
Mm,
though you didn't teach that directly, how many of those kids found, oh gosh, when I move my body and I'm active, there's something in me that comes alive and something in me that gives me hope.
yeah. And I will say, they were the kids were so responsive. Like, I just remember there was a lot of joy about the classes, my classes. And yeah, it's
That's
a little
because you had joy teaching it.
I had joy teaching it, and I had joy with them, and I loved calling them into their expansiveness in who they were as just young, 13, 14, 15, 16 year olds, and inviting them into what does it mean to be alive and free and laugh and have fun, um and not allowing the darkness of life and maybe some of this system that they were in, that, like, yeah, let's break out of these boundaries.
Yeah. I know we're getting ready to close out, but
Mhm.
I want to say, Cher, you just sent a video to our group of your granddaughter moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just noticing how much joy it brought all of us to see your joy over of watching your granddaughter develop and grow. And
Yeah.
um, I don't know why I'm bringing that up, except that it feels connected. Share that your gift, one of your gifts, and who you are, is to help people feel alive and fully free. What's the other one? Alive
Courageous.
and courageous. And your little granddaughter, like, she's learning, hey, I have a body and I actually can do something with it.
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I just feel like that's a sweet way to bring back to this is who you are. Share, you want, your desire is for people to
Mm.
feel free and fully alive and courageous.
And to reclaim their glory, because my granddaughter, nobody's teaching her this. Like, she just began, music would come on, she would look, and her body would start moving. And it's her glory. Not every kid does that. A lot of children do, but she is, and she's less than a year old, like, but her body is just responding like this is part of her glory. And I am just loving watching her and the smiles that come to her face. And yeah, it's very sweet.
Yeah. Mm. Well, we will come back next week and I'll be in the hot seat. I hope you didn't feel like you were in the hot seat.
Not at all. Loved it.
Okay, good. Okay, it's so good to be with you today, friend.
You too. Love you so much, Candace.
Love you too.